Okay. All right, so here we are again. So let's carry on with the sutta we were looking at yesterday, which is the sutta which is called craving. This is about craving for existence, having a cause, and seeing the cause for craving to exist being ignorance, and then going back stage by stage, and going back to the root cause of the problem, which is hanging out with the wrong kind of people, basically. Yeah, that's the root of the problem. So if you hang out with, or you associate with, as it says here, with people who are not enlightened, or people who don't really understand the nature of things, then it leads ultimately to more dukkha, to more rebirth, to more continued existence, and all of these kind of things. And that is the message of this sutta. So I'm going to go through it in a bit more detail. I'm going to look at the positive side of things. In other words, what is the causes for freedom? Freedom is kind of the main theme here. And so we're going to look at freedom and then take it back to the root cause of freedom and look at each of these factors that we have seen already in a bit more detail, what they mean, how they are to be understood, and how they are to be practiced, not the least. So we are halfway through the sutta, and so I hope you are keeping up with where we are at. And it starts off by saying, I say that knowledge and freedom are fueled by something. They are not unfueled. And what is the fuel for knowledge and freedom? And you should say the 7 awakening factors, or the 7 factors of awakening. I'll just read through the whole sequence, and then we can come back again to each of these stages one by one afterwards. I say that the 7 awakening factors are fueled by something. They are not unfueled. And what is the fuel for the 7 factors of awakening? You should say the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation. I say that the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation are fueled by something. They are not unfueled. And what is their fuel? Their fuel is the 3 kinds of good conduct. I say that the 3 kinds of good conduct are fueled by something. They are not unfueled. And their fuel is sense restraint. I say that sense restraint is fueled by something. It is not unfueled. And its fuel is mindfulness and situational awareness. I say mindfulness and situational awareness is fueled by something. It is not unfueled. Its fuel is rational application of the mind, yoniso manasikara, wise attention, if you like. Rational application of the mind is fueled by something. It is not unfueled. It is fueled by faith, saddha, confidence. I say that faith is fueled by something. It is not unfueled. And what is the fuel of faith? You should say listening to the true teachings. I say that listening to the true teaching is fueled by something. It is not unfueled, and it is fueled by associating with true persons. True persons is sappurisa. So this is the sequence. 10 factors, 10 items altogether, each one leading to the higher one. And so let's have a look at this in a bit more detail. Going back to the beginning again. So the purpose of all of this is to reach what is here called knowledge and freedom. Knowledge and freedom are vijja and vimutti. In Pali, vijja, I think sometimes knowledge is maybe not the ideal word for the Pali here, because this has to do obviously with insight, with seeing things in the right way. Whereas the word knowledge in English often means you go to school or whatever and you learn some basic things about the world or whatever. And this, of course, is very different from that. It is a kind of knowledge, but it's also an insight, an understanding of the nature of things. And so that's kind of nice, isn't it? It's nice to see things according to reality. If you understand things, if you have that wisdom, understanding life, understanding yourself, understanding your mind, then there is nothing kind of higher than that. Having a full understanding of what's going on is the opposite of delusion, the opposite of being confused, the opposite of not knowing what is happening. And it's always the case that understanding things in the right way is a very positive thing. Because once you see things in the right way, you can make good decisions. This is the idea of right view. being the cause for right intention in the Noble Eightfold Path. It always starts with right view. When you see things, you can intend wisely. When you understand things, you can make good decisions. If you don't know what's going on, how can you make good decisions? You just haven't got a clue what you're doing. And so the idea of this sort of insight, reality, seeing things in the right way, is fundamental to the idea of the spiritual life. And in this sense, the spiritual life is the same as any other kind of life. If you want to be a good doctor, you have to know something about medicine. If you go to the hospital and someone says, actually I'm not a doctor, but I just like to operate on people, you're going to say, thank you very much, but I'll find someone else. Or you kind of hire a lawyer who has never doesn't know anything about law. Of course, knowledge is always fundamental to anything, and especially insight, the deeper understanding of things. And so to be able to be happy, to be able to have a meaningful life, you have to understand things in the right way. So vidya is absolutely fundamental. And always going with that vidya is always freedom. Freedom, happiness, all of these good things, they come together in this, understanding things according to reality. That liberates you because it allows you again to make good decisions. So freedom on the one hand, insight on the other. These are both very beautiful ideas. It's about wisdom. It's about being liberated from oppressions and negative things and control and all of these kind of things. That is this is one very beautiful way of thinking about the result of this whole path of practice. So how does this come about? And what it says here comes about because of the 7 factors of awakening. What are the 7 factors of awakening? For those of you who are more new to Buddhism, these are again a set. Obviously, there are 7 of them. That's one of those quiz questions. How many factors, 7 factors of awakening are there? So they are 7, and they also are causally conditioned. They relate to each other. It starts with the first one, and it ends up with the last one, and they condition each other all the way through. So there is a natural sequence, an evolution with the 7 factors of awakening. And it starts off with the first one. It's known as the sati sambojjhanga, the awakening factor of mindfulness. That's where it begins. And then after that is the Dhammavicaya Sambojjhanga. Dhammavicaya means vicaya is like investigation, or it's basically investigation, inquiry into something. It's inquiring into Dhamma. Dhamma here means qualities of the mind, especially like the principles, the causal principles that underlie the qualities of the mind. And so the idea here is that you have mindfulness, but you want to purify the mind fully. And to be able to purify the mind fully, you have to investigate the qualities of the mind. That's how you abandon the dark states, like the hindrances, and you develop the good states, which are precisely the 7 factors of awakening, because you inquire into the qualities of the mind. So mindfulness allows you that inquiry, understanding what is happening within you. From that inquiry, because that means you can abandon those hindrances, the piti arises, the joy. We've been talking about this already quite a bit, the idea of joy. We saw before how sila, the morality, leads to non-regret. Non-regret leads to pamudja, also called joy or gladness, and then that gladness leads to piti. It's exactly the same principle. Here it talks about the abandoning of unwholesome qualities. Well, that is equivalent roughly to sila. The complete abandoning of the 5 hindrances is equivalent to a very profound and deep state of sila, of morality. So you can see, again, all of these things are very closely related to each other. Then that piti then leads to energy. Piti is, in a sense, a kind of energy. So these things are very closely related to each other again. You feel energized. The mind is bright. The mind is the opposite of dullness when you have these kind of joys in the mind. So the energy arises. From that energy comes passaddhi, the passaddhi sambojjhanga, the awakening factor of tranquility. You are deepening the meditation, and you go from that kind of slightly excited joy to a very peaceful, deep, profound kind of happiness. What we saw before is like when you don't really want to move anymore. You're completely, utterly content with what you're doing. And then that Passaddhi Sambhojjhanga leads on to the Samadhi Sambhojjhanga, the awakening factor of stillness. The kind of profound stillness of the Samadhi, where sometimes you are locked into a particular quality, locked into a state, maybe for hours, maybe for days. So if you get into one of these states, and at the end of the retreat we can't get you out, we will allow you to sit here, and you can sit here for as long as you like until you emerge from that state. And sometimes these things happen. People really get locked into these qualities, and they stay there for long periods of time. According to the suttas, when the samadhi is really, really profound, you can stay in a state for 7 days. Isn't that kind of cool? Just sit there for 7 days. Nothing happens at all for 7 days. There's no breathing. There's nothing going on. It's just complete. People think you are dead. You know that story? You know that story. Those of you who have been here before, you know that story. It's a great story. It's from the suttas. It's in the, which sutta is it again? It's in the Maratajaniya Sutta, I think, Majjhima 50. I think it's there. And this is a story under a previous Buddha, and he had 2 kind of great disciples. Obviously, they were very good meditators. And one day, this meditator, this disciple, he goes into this state called cessation of perception and feeling. Everything stops. Sanya Vedayita Nirodha is the Pali word for that. And when you go into that state, everything stops. And so these 2 people kind of walking around the forest, they were gathering sticks and things, kind of, firewood or whatever. And so they see this monk sitting there. And one of them said, "Oh no, look at this monk over there. Looks like he's dead. Let's give him a good funeral." So they're collecting firewood. So very handy. So they have all the firewood ready. So they kind of make this funeral pyre and kind of put the monk on top. Put him on top like this. And then they light the funeral pyre. And so now we can leave him. We can just kind of allow him to get cremated. And then the next day in the morning, all the monks are kind of coming into town, filing in to kind of go for alms round. And these 2 people who were collecting fire sticks or whatever, they are there to put food into the monks' bowls. And so the monks come, and eventually this monk come, and they look at this monk, "But we cremated you yesterday. Now you're coming on arms around." That's the story. It's kind of interesting. So the story, the idea is that if you go into those states, you can't really be cremated. Nothing can touch you. That's kind of the idea there. So I don't know how that works, or whether that's a myth or whether it's reality. But there's some remarkable things can happen in the world. So maybe that's actually how it works. So that's kind of the story of things really stop completely. It looks like you're dead. Of course, if you touch the person, they're still warm. So you would know that they're warm, so they can't actually be dead. But nevertheless, that's kind of what it looks like. There are some other examples of that as well, but let's leave those examples for now. Otherwise, we're going to be here for too long. So you go into these samadhi states that can last for a very long time. That's the samadhi sambhojjhanga. And then the last of these factors of awakening is the upekkha sambhojjhanga, the factor of awakening of equanimity, or the evenness of the mind. This is the last one. And again, this is the last one because that is equivalent to the 4th jhana, the highest kind of samadhi, also roughly equivalent to the upekkha Brahma Vihara, the 4 Brahma Viharas, the divine abidings, being the last one. So this is the highest kind of thing, the highest kind of really samadhi. From there, it is almost guaranteed that you will be at least a stream enterer, because especially if you have right view. If you haven't got right view, it will be a problem. But if you have the Buddha's teaching to support you, it is pretty much impossible not to become a stream enterer at that point. And so these are the 7 factors of awakening. And you can see what they are. They are the process of meditation that we talked about before. Yeah, going through that process, starting with sati, starting with mindfulness, going via all the various qualities of the mind that arise as a consequence of that sati, and then ending in samadhi, ending in the stillness of the mind, the highest one being the upekkha, the equanimity. That is what that is. And if you do that, whether you want to or not, you're going to become enlightened. Yeah. So you have no choice at that point. It's just going to happen to you. You achieve vijja vimutti. And it's very interesting because you will notice it doesn't really say anything about vipassana. Yeah, it doesn't say anything much about investigation, apart from the Dhammavicaya Sambojjhanga, which is an investigation. And the reason why it doesn't say anything about that is because that is kind of part of the process. This happens if you practice samadhi in the right way, you practice the mindfulness of breathing, then part of that process is the development of insight. You can't avoid that. You follow the instructions, for example, that you find in the Anapanasati Sutta, and the insights are developed as a consequence of how this path works. And that's really interesting. It is samadhi is the foundation for true insight. That is where it comes from, and this is a standard refrain you find again and again in the suttas. That is the foundation for this. Insight develops from that, so that is kind of one very important message right here. That you reach awakening. The cause for awakening is deep samadhi. And then what is the fuel for those 7 factors of awakening? And the answer is the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation. This is the 4 satipatthanas. Again, very interesting, because very often we say that the satipatthanas are, this is what you do to reach awakening. But here you will see it happens because the satipatthanas leads to samadhi, and then that leads to awakening. And this, of course, fits with the Noble Eightfold Path, where Satipatthana comes first, then comes Samadhi. It fits with the idea in the Anapanasati Sutta. The main way that Satipatthana is said to be practiced in the suttas is by mindfulness of breathing. Mindfulness of breathing is a kind of Satipatthana practice. And so by practicing Anapanasati and Satipatthana, then what happens, the mind becomes unified. That's the consequence of deep, proper meditation practice, and that unification of the mind, that stillness, then in turn leads to the awakening experience. So this gives you a very clear idea of kind of what is happening, how this whole process works. And the idea of a clear seeing, the idea of vipassana, is part and parcel of this process. One of those interesting things in the suttas is that the words samatha and vipassana, they almost always occur as a compound in the suttas. Compound, it means the words are put together as if it is one idea, samatha, vipassana. And the reason for that is because they are 2 sides of the same coin. They always go together. You can't really separate these things. And so as you do this process, it just happens. So this is the idea of Satipatthana practice. It leads to the Bojjhangas, and then that leads to awakening. So what is the cause for Satipatthana? And the answer is here, the 3 kinds of good conduct. Let me just check that to be absolutely sure. Yes, that is correct. So I haven't gone senile yet. It's coming soon, but so far not yet. So 3 kinds of good conduct. Body, speech, and mind. So body, speech, and mind, of course, that mind includes overcoming all the negative qualities of the mind, building up the good qualities of the mind. That includes the abandoning of the 5 hindrances. That is what is included in this. Elsewhere in the suttas, you see a similar kind of sequence. It says that overcoming the 5 hindrances, then the mindfulness meditation, satipatthana, then the 7 factors of awakening, then awakening. So it's the same kind of idea. So the 5 hindrances are here included within the 3 kinds of good conduct, also partly included within the mindfulness meditations, because you overcome the hindrances by practicing that in the right way. And isn't that really interesting. The 3 kinds of good conduct leads directly to the meditation, basically to samadhi, to your ability to watch the breath, to your ability to do the metta meditation. Whatever kind of meditation you want to do, it is derived, it comes from, it is founded on the 3 kinds of good conduct. So can you do the 3 kinds of good conduct? And of course you can. You just have to be kind in the way you deal with the world. You have to kind of make sure your actions are appropriate, your speech is appropriate. Those are the 2 basic things. Can you do it? Well, sometimes you may feel it is impossible to get your speech always right. How can I always speak kind speech? It is hard because speech happens so fast, and when you are busy in society, things come out of your mouth before you kind of really have a chance to consider it properly very often. But the more you understand how important this is, the more right view you have about the significance of this, the more you understand, I really have to do this. This is what creates the whole path for me. If I can be kind pretty much all the time, it's just going to happen. And it doesn't matter how other people treat me. It's kind of irrelevant. They can do whatever they want. It's their problem. If they want to treat me badly, actually got nothing to do with me. That is their problem. And I will just have compassion for them, because why are they treating a good person like me in a bad way? And that's true. If you know that you are living well, why do other people treat you badly? They are just stupid. And you have the right to kind of know that you are, at the very least, trying to practice in a good way. You're trying to do what is right. So why are they treating you badly when you are? It's true, you are a good person. And so it is their problem. And even if you are not a good person, still it is their problem if they treat you badly. No one has the right to treat anyone else badly. So we need to get away from this idea of getting upset because other people treat us badly. Got nothing to do with you. It's irrelevant what other people do. It's not none of your business, so to speak. And that's a beautiful way of thinking about things. It gets you out of this kind of problem in the world. So understand the importance of this. If you really want to make progress on the path, these things are critical. This is what we mean when we talk about the idea of right view. This is what we mean when we talk about having a sense of urgency, understanding all of these connections, how they work together. And if you know you've been coming here to these retreats for many, many years and coming here, and you can see that sometimes progress is okay, maybe there's a bit of progress there. Sometimes it may seem that you are stagnating a bit, not making progress. Why is that? It's because we don't put enough emphasis on the foundations, the things that make these things work. So get that speech right. Allow flowers and honey to come out of your mouth. Not kind of worms and snakes. This kind of the thing. Allow the beautiful things to come out. And the same thing in your actions, the same thing, and this is where it starts to get difficult, the same way in the way you think about other people. Give people the benefit of the doubt, understand them always through compassion, always through kindness. This is of course tricky, but if you want to do it, and you are really committed to doing it, you will be able to do it. Because it is based on natural principles. It is just looking at people through the lens of right view. And if you look at people through the lens of right view, how can you possibly blame them? The reason why you still blame them is just because of your habits. You have strong habits from the past, which is to blaming other people if they do stupid things, or to kind of think of them badly and get angry with them. These are the powerful habits of the past. But many of you will agree with me and the Buddha, more importantly, that this all comes from a misunderstanding of the nature of people. We see them as these autonomous, independent agents who decide, I am going to be bad, and I'm going to hurt you, evil, And of course, then you might be able to blame people if that's how they think, But that is not how they think, Or if they do think like that, that too is because of conditioning, So everything is just conditioning. Everything is just how they have been formed from the past, and they can't stop themselves. And I say this all the time because it's so important, and it's so important to be reminded of this. And when this really sinks in, and this is the right view of non-self, the right view how conditionality permeates everything, then whatever happens in your life, you stop getting angry with people. You stop feeling upset when they do something bad or whatever. And instead, you have compassion for them. And when they have good qualities, you feel, yay, what a wonderful thing it is to see people with good qualities and beautiful things. So you can see, it's kind of simple. You just have to be kind. It's really understanding what is going on. The Dhamma is not complicated. The hard part is actually doing it. The hard part is committing. The hard part is persevering, not understanding what you have to do. And then the meditation arises from that. And for those of you who are getting some nice meditation, well, this is why it is happening. Because you are living in the right way. You are doing all the right kind of things. So the three kinds of good conduct is the cause for meditation practice. This is how you understand this. So what is the cause for the three kinds of good conduct? And the answer here is sense restraint. And why is that? Well, because sense restraint is what purifies the mind. It puts the mind in the right balance. And when the mind is in the right way, well, then speech and bodily actions also kind of fall into place. So this is the kind of final factor that you have to make work out. And if that works out, then all the three kinds of good conduct also tend to work out. So sense restraint is what puts the mind in the right place. You remember that people are doing stupid things not because they want to hurt you, but just because they are conditioned and all of that, and you stop getting angry. That is sense restraint based on the idea of wisdom, and then all the three kinds of good conduct fall in place because of that. That's the idea of sense restraint. So you can see that the way that these factors are mentioned on the path, sometimes they come in slightly different orders because it depends on whether it is the fulfillment of that factor, or it is a preliminary use of that factor, and all of these kind of things, depending on how they condition each other. And so then the next one then is the mindfulness and situational awareness. And that is what allows sense restraint. Because if you do things that are inappropriate, if you do things that are not suitable in your life, you're not going to be able to have sense restraint. Because certain things, if you kind of go and watch lots of entertainment and movies, sense restraint is impossible. Watching movies and things are the opposite of sense restraint. When you watch a movie, you do it to kind of get involved with the character. You go there to laugh with the character and cry with the characters, what you see on the screen. You get drawn in by these things. You lose your ability to see things neutrally with sense restraint. And so situational awareness means that you do things in the life that are purposeful, that are suitable for the spiritual path, and you avoid those things that are not suitable. And if you have to do things that might be a bit dangerous, well, then you do them for the right reason, in a way that does not cause problems for yourself. And then sense restraint becomes possible because you are living your life in a wise way, doing suitable things. So that is basically the idea of situational awareness. It is defined in the commentaries as four things, situational awareness. Sati sampajanya. And one is the purpose of what you're doing. You're doing the things that are purposeful in terms of the Noble Eightfold Path. They are suitable also for that purpose. And then there is the gochara sampajana. This is a higher kind of sampajana, which happens during meditation practice. And that is that you stay with the meditation object. You don't lose it. And that's the sampajanya there. You're doing that which you're supposed to be doing. The purpose is to watch the breath. Okay, so you watch the breath. And the last one is non-delusion. And non-delusion is when sampajanya becomes very, very profound, and you don't take things to be a self anymore. You don't see things in terms of self, but in terms of non-self. So these are the various levels of sampajanya. They come in different levels depending on how profound your meditation is, but the two basic ones is what everyone can do: purpose and suitability. What is the purpose of what you're doing? How suitable is it? That leads then to sense restraint. So why do we have situational awareness? What is the cause for situational awareness? Sati sampajanya is the Pali word for that. Sense restraint is the indriya sangvara sila. Yeah, just getting the Pali words out there, because I know that some of you know the Pali words, but you may not know the English translations, especially if you come from a Buddhist kind of background, a Buddhist upbringing. You may be more familiar with the Pali terms than you are with the English vocabulary, which is kind of nice. I really like that idea. So that's wonderful. And so what is the cause for mindfulness and situational awareness, Sati Sampajanya? It is yoniso manasikara. Yeah, here called rational application of the mind, or wise attention, as it is often translated as well. Yeah, so to be able to make good choices, what is purposeful and suitable, you have to attend in a wise way to what is happening in your life. And as I mentioned yesterday, the idea of yoniso manasikara is the foundation for everything good in life, everything good in your practice. Every time you are leaning in the right direction, every time you are applying your mind in a good way, every time you are growing in good qualities and declining in bad qualities, the reason for that is yoniso manasikara. You're attending wisely. And as someone asked yesterday, this very often implies understanding causes. Yoni having the idea of origin, the origin of things. And it is sort of implied that you are looking into the causes and the origins of things. It's kind of an important part of this. Because when you understand origins and causes and the connection of things, then you can avoid the causes, and then the results, the bad results don't happen, and you can put in place the good causes, the good results happen. And so yoniso manasikara is always attending in the right way. Then you are doing yoniso manasikara. Ideally, we should do this all the time. It should be part of kind of our mental setup, always looking out. What is the right way of doing things now? What am I thinking? Are you aware of what is going on? So this should be an underlying thing at all times. So what is it that gives rise to this right attention, or wise attention, or rational application of mind, or cause-wise attention, or whatever you want to call it? What is the cause of that? And this is kind of where, to me, it gets very interesting. Because if something is wise attention, you might think wisdom gives rise to that. Because without wisdom, how can you have wise attention? Or at least you should be rational, if it's a rational application of the mind. But the answer, and this is, I think, very interesting, the answer is saddha. And saddha is often faith, translated as faith. In fact, it has two sides to it. Saddha, on the one hand, is faith, but it's also confidence. Because in the suttas, the idea is that saddha reaches its highest point, the pinnacle, when you have insight into the Dhamma. It becomes the aveccha pasada, and pasada and saddha are basically two sides of the same point. Aveccha pasada means confirmed confidence, unwavering, unshakable confidence is what it means. Confidence that you have arrived at the insight. And so there's a strange thing about Buddhism, and this is contrary to most other kind of spiritual systems in the world, is that confidence or faith and wisdom are two sides of the same coin. So if the more wisdom you have, the more insight you have, the more saddha you have. And why is that? Well, because you know, you have seen it. And so that's why I don't always like the word faith, because faith in English usually means you accept something without really knowing. But here it grows together with insight. And so confidence in that sense is a more important one. And so when we use the word saddha, it is like this mixture of faith and confidence. On the one hand, it is confidence because you have a degree of understanding, you have investigated. The deeper it is, the deeper is your insight, the more saddha you have. And on the other hand, saddha is also the emotional reaction to that. When you have confidence in the word of the Buddha, it's like, wow, this is just amazing. This is what I've always been looking for. This is the answer to what life is all about. This is the purpose of existence. I have found it. And of course, that gives rise, if you do it in the right way, if you do the Buddha-nusati, recollection of the Buddha, the Dhamma-nusati, recollection of the Dhamma, the Sangha-nusati, recollection of the Sangha, that does give rise to joy if you understand what is going on. And so those two sides of saddha coming together, yeah, confidence side and the emotional side, which is more like faith, coming together. I think I still prefer the word confidence personally, but anyway, both of those words are are meant here as part of this. And I think the reason I prefer confidence is because if you use the word faith, then it becomes too much like other religions. And we assume that it has a similar kind of meaning, but actually it doesn't really have the same meaning. It's a different outlook, a different way of thinking about things. And so faith gives rise to Yoniso-manasikara. Confidence gives rise to Yoniso-manasikara. Why is that? Well, because if you have confidence and faith in the teachings of the Buddha, you will practice accordingly. And that practicing in accordance to the Buddha's teaching, that is wise attention. The Buddha tells you, attend in this way, don't attend in that way. He says, attend to impermanence. Don't attend to the beauty of the body, see the body in a neutral sense, like the four elements or whatever. He says, attend to the mindfulness of breathing, base yourself on sila. Yeah? All of these things are ways of attending to the world, and it comes from faith and confidence in the Buddha. And so initially, when we start out with be wise attention or trying to be wise, it is not our wisdom. It is borrowed wisdom. We are borrowing it from the Buddha. Yeah, it's like, thank you very much, Buddha, for passing on the wisdom to me. Yeah, I need this wisdom. I haven't really got it myself, so thank you for passing it on. And so we borrow it from the Buddha. So next time you bow down to the Buddha, you can thank the Buddha for passing on that wisdom to you. Yeah, so the Buddha gives us that wisdom. Because we have faith, it is also a little bit our wisdom, because we understand that the Buddha is right. That understanding that the Buddha is right is a kind of wisdom. So it's not entirely faith-based in that sense. It's also coming from our own realization that something beautiful and powerful is going on here. But it is interesting that the beginning of wise application of the mind, wisdom, is faith. And then as you develop the path, you gain deeper and deeper insight into things, that faith becomes more and more confidence, more and more certainty, becomes stronger and stronger. And that means it is gradually turning into your own wisdom. More and more it becomes your understanding of the world. And then that Yoniso-manasikara, the wise application to wise attention, becomes the way that you just deal with the world, because you know it is the right way of dealing with things. And so this is the idea here. Yeah, faith leads to wise attention. Why? Because that is the word of the Buddha, are wise, and you use those as a way of dealing with the world. And of course, if faith obviously has to come out of listening to the true teachings. Yeah, you hear the Dhamma, and then you gain faith and you gain confidence because of that. So you hear the suttas. This is what we're doing right now. Yeah, we're hearing the suttas, and I don't know if it gives confidence to you, and if it doesn't give confidence, if you feel more doubt than ever, then that can also happen, right? So it doesn't necessarily lead to confidence. You have people who listen to the Buddha and they say, "What is this? I don't believe any word of what you're saying," and they kind of walk away and they kind of lose their opportunity. Occasionally that will happen, and that's just the way things are. But for those people who are ready, then that will happen. They will have some confidence in these teachings. And where does that confidence in those teachings come from? It comes from association with the sappurisa, is here called the true persons, or if you like, the superior people. These are starting with the Buddha and then all the other areas in the world. Those people who have understood these teachings personally, these are the sappurisa. That will be very often found in the Sangha, monks and nuns. Sometimes it is found among lay people. You occasionally find lay people who also are Aryas. There are not many Aryas in the world. It's a rare thing, but there still are Aryas around. And so, you just have to observe for yourself and then make that decision whether there are Aryas around or not. Are people practicing in accordance with these teachings or not? So that is the foundation for everything, yeah? Associating with the wise, associating with the superior people. That is where everything comes from. And one very good way of doing that is to associate with the Buddha, yeah, by reading the suttas. It is still available. And this is one of the reasons why I like to use the suttas as the foundation for these kind of retreats, because in that case we are actually getting the teaching straight from the source of all that is Buddhism in the world, are rooted in these teachings. This is the foundation that make everything else possible, everything else meaningful. So associate with true people. From that, give rise to all of these other qualities, yeah, based on that. So don't forget this. Right view arises from here. This is where you get the right kind of instructions. And the more you associate it with those wise people, the more it happens. So what is actually going on here? Why is it so important to associate with wise people? And there's many things that is going on. One thing is that what they say will be interesting. Yeah? It will kind of add to your understanding of the world. And it will all fit together beautifully. You get the feeling that this is really makes really good sense. It's a system where all the bits and pieces fit together in a very kind of holistic way. And that is very reassuring when that happens. But it's not just that. That is only part of it. A very important part is also where these people are coming from. Yeah, when you listen to the Buddha, it's not just the words that he is saying, but it's how he is saying those words. Where is it coming from? Is it coming from compassion? Is it trying to teach you something which is for your own good? Or is he trying to convert you because he is establishing a cult? Yeah? Why is the Buddha doing this? And you get the feeling that when the Buddha is teaching, he is doing it because of compassion. He's doing it only for your benefit. The Buddha himself would prefer not to teach you. Why would he want to teach people? It's just a hassle to teach people. If you are enlightened already, you've finished everything you have to do, you would rather go to a cave and just meditate and be peaceful, because that is where you find real happiness. You're having to talk to people, and then they will argue with you, and they will say they don't believe you anyway, and then sometimes they might abuse you and all these kind of things. It's just, there isn't anything to be gained by teaching others. For someone like the Buddha, there's only things to be lost by the Buddha. And so it comes purely from compassion, and you should be able to feel that when someone is teaching. Where are they coming from? Where is Ajahn Brahm coming from? And sometimes I listen to Ajahn Brahm, I sit down, and you just feel peaceful in the presence of someone like Ajahn Brahm, because there's a quality about someone like that. Yeah, someone who doesn't really have any sense of ego, someone who doesn't really project themselves into the world and say, "I am here, listen to me." Yeah? Instead, they kind of fade away. They barely exist anymore as human beings, and it's very powerful, very tangible, very peaceful. It draws you in, not just from what the content of the speech, but from how it is delivered, how it makes you feel. This is part of it. So when you see someone like the Buddha, there is a congruence there. What they say and how they live are congruent. They match with each other. They don't live in one way. They're not hypocritical at all. They are fully immersed in the Dhamma. What they say is also how they practice, how they are. And so this is why it is so powerful. Yeah, so associating with the wise is not just about hearing the right teachings, it's about much more than that. And this is one of the great benefits of living in a good monastery, is that you have the ability to associate with people like that. And it's very, very difficult, much more difficult in the world at large, where you tend to associate with people who do all kinds of things, all kinds of things that is contrary to the Dhamma, and they draw you in the wrong direction. And they say, work harder and you will get the promotion. Mm-hmm. And you think, I'm not sure if I need that promotion, actually, I'd rather not have it, and people think you are nuts if you don't want to have the promotion or whatever. But that is kind of the worldly way, and how things go in the exact opposite according to Dhamma. And so then the Buddha then summarizes this. He has this long sequence again. So let's just see what it looks like in summary. In this way, when the factor of associating with true persons is fulfilled, it fulfills the factor of listening to the true teaching. When the factor of listening to the true teaching is fulfilled, it fulfills the factor of faith or confidence, which in turn fulfills the factor of wise attention or rational application of the mind, which in turn fulfills the factor of mindfulness and situational awareness, or mindfulness and clear comprehension, or however you want to translate that, which then fulfills the sense restraint, which then fulfills the 3 kinds of good conduct, which then fulfills the 4 kinds of satipatthana, mindfulness meditation, which then fulfills the 7 factors of awakening, which then fulfill ultimately knowledge and freedom, or insight and freedom, or wisdom and freedom, however you want to look at it. And that's the fuel for insight and freedom, and that is how it is fulfilled. Yeah, so basically what it is saying, if you hang around the true people enough, you become enlightened. That's basically what it is saying. Yeah, that is the ultimate cause. And if you do that and you keep that going, filling it up, doing it again and again, awakening is going to happen. And then there is a beautiful simile, which I always found very, very nice. So the same simile we saw yesterday, but now it has kind of the positive side of things. Yeah, it's like when the heaven rains heavenly on a mountaintop, and the water flows downhill to fill the hollows, the crevices, and the creeks. And as they become full, they fill up the pools. The pools fill up the lake fill up the stream fill up the rivers. And as the rivers become full, they fill up the ocean. That's the fuel for the ocean, and that is how it is filled up. Yeah, the idea here, the rain on the mountaintop is associating with the wise people. The rain on the mountaintop is associating with the Aryas, the noble ones, the superior people in the world. That's the rain. And if it keeps on raining, yeah, the raining will eventually, but it has to rain for quite a while, right? Because the rain on the mountaintop filling up the rivers, obviously it's going to take a lot of rain. Yeah, like, the Ganges or whatever, takes a lot of rain to fill up the Ganges. But if it does keep on raining, if you keep on going, keep on doing the thing again and again and again, never really letting up, never relenting, just keep the rain coming, then this is the outcome of that rain pouring down, filling up the larger and larger streams, filling up the lakes, filling up the rivers eventually, and eventually reaching the ocean, which is Nibbana, which is awakening itself. And it's a beautiful idea, because what it shows you is the power of conditioning. Yeah, we're talking about how we are conditioned all the time. We're talking about right view being at the foundation of the path. And this is that process of conditioning right there in action. By allowing yourself to be conditioned by good conditioning, this is the result of that good conditioning. Yeah, instead of being conditioned by silliness, instead of allowing your habits from the past to take you over and cause you to move in a certain direction, now you're letting go gradually of those habits. You're reconditioning your mind, and the consequence of that reconditioning, it is slow. It takes time because our mind has this tremendous momentum from the past. I've always used the simile of the supertanker. The supertanker, which is very, very heavy, maybe weighing 500,000 tons, going at 20 knots, takes a long, long time to make that supertanker turn around. It takes kilometers, 20, 30 kilometers to make that happen sometimes. This is the same thing with the human experience. Our habits, our conditioning from the past has this tremendous momentum, this tremendous power that leads us on. And unless we allow that rain to keep on coming every day, moment after moment, reminding yourself of what the Buddha said, reminding yourself of the example of the Aryas, all the time. As you do that, that rain keeps on coming. Gradually, slowly, the supertanker is changing its course, until eventually one day it is moving in exactly the opposite direction. Instead of getting angry, you have compassion. Instead of having ill will or whatever, all of these things. You have metta towards the people around you. Instead of accumulating things in the world, you're on the path of renunciation, of giving things up, because you understand that is where the true happiness is to be found. And this is this idea of the rain on the mountaintop. It's a very powerful simile. Yeah, it's one of these things that if you grasp it, maybe it will stay in your mind. And it becomes one of these sources for the whole path to work and the whole path to become more powerful as a consequence. So then, the Buddha sums this up one more time, one final time. In the same way, when the factor of associating with true persons is fulfilled, it fulfills the factor of listening to the true teaching. When the factor of listening to the true teaching is fulfilled, it fulfills the factor of confidence, which fulfills the wise attention, which fulfills the mindfulness and situational awareness, which fulfills the sense restraint, which fulfills the three kinds of good conduct, which fulfills the mindfulness meditation, which fulfills the 7 factors of awakening. And when the 7 factors of awakening are fulfilled, they fulfill knowledge and freedom, vidya vimutti. That is the fuel for knowledge and freedom, and that is how it is fulfilled. So, there you are. So that is that powerful sutta, on the craving for existence. And it's all about how we are conditioned, how this right view and the conditioning starts from the beginning. Well, the next sutta is basically a very short extract. It's a continuation of that, and it's kind of making the same point. So I think we can just briefly look at that before we break, because there isn't that much to be said about it, but basically says the same thing from a slightly different angle. And this is the Mahavedalla Sutta, translated here as the Great Elaboration. This is from the middle-length sayings of the Buddha, the Majjhima Nikaya, number 43. And this is a discussion between Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahakotita, 2 of the great disciples of the Buddha. And there are many, many discussions between these 2 monks, in particular in the suttas. And this is a short extract from a long sutta. And I think this is Venerable Mahakotita asking Venerable Sariputta. And he asks him, how many conditions are there for the arising of right view? So how does right view come about? This is kind of one of the things that we have been looking at all along. And usually when you talk about right view in this kind of context, it means stream entry. But it doesn't just mean stream entry. It means any kind of right view arises out of these 2 conditions. 2 things, There are 2 conditions for the arising of the right view. The voice of another and the wise attention, the rational application of the mind. These are the 2 conditions for the arising of right view. So, and usually you need both of these things. One is not enough. So you hear the voice of another. The voice of another is basically the word of the Buddha. That is what the suttas are about. That's the voice of another. It's the voice of someone who is already enlightened, someone who knows what the path is. And this is like I mentioned the other day about the gradual training begins with the arising of the Buddha in the world. Without the rising of the Buddha in the world, there is no voice of another. It doesn't just mean the voice of anyone, just any random person. It means the voice of someone who knows something profound. So paratogosa is the Pali here. And you could say the Arya, the Aryato Gosa, the voice from the Aryas. That would be another way of saying this. So here it just says the voice of another, which is kind of a bit ambiguous, but it means obviously the voice of the Arya. That's actually the meaning of this. So this is a foundational. Without that, there is no beginning of the path. And once you have the voice of another, you have to apply that in the right way, wisely. First of all, if you don't have the wise attention, you don't even understand that this voice of another is worthy of attending to. But once you have attended to the voice of another, well, then you have to apply those teachings in your life. That requires wise attention. So both of these things have to come together. It is the voice of another and wise attention, not one or the other, but both coming together. And that is kind of very interesting, because it means, from a kind of Theravada point of view, that there isn't really any bodhisattva path. Yeah, we often talk about the bodhisattva path, and this is very much developed in Mahayana Buddhism. And there isn't any bodhisattva path, because you haven't got the voice of another. The idea of the bodhisattva path is that you do it yourself without relying on someone else who is an Arya. But this sutta is telling that that's impossible, because the condition for the arising of right view is not there. So how can you become a bodhisattva then, if there is no bodhisattva path? Well, the answer is that bodhisattva does not happen because you are practicing a path. Bodhisattva, you become a bodhisattva, you become a Buddha, not because you're practicing a certain path, but basically it just randomly happens. You happen to be influenced in a certain way. The factors of the Noble Eightfold Path happen not because you hear someone else, but because sometimes your conditioning is such that they become assembled anyway. If you look at the world, for example, prior to Buddhism, there were already people who practiced samadhi, so they were not that far away from awakening. And that happened why? Well, because of all kinds of conditions in that society, people were practicing samadhi. And so you know already that people can go a long way on the path just because of all kinds of conditioning. And all that remains is that tiny last element, the going from samadhi, understanding that samadhi too is unreliable and impermanent. And then you can gain that insight, final insight into the conditionality of all phenomena. And so the reason why, so there isn't really any bodhisattva path according to early Buddhist teachings, because a path means someone who is teaching it. It means that you are following something which is kind of laid down. But there is no indication of that, because you need the paratagosa, you need the voice of another, and that is what is missing for someone who becomes a Buddha. So a Buddha is more like, it just kind of, it's a bit random whether someone becomes a Buddha or not. It's not really random, it happens because of cause and conditions, but a very complicated network of cause and conditions that is not a specific path that has been laid down that someone follows. And that's how I understand the early teachings of the Buddha. So then the Venerable Mahakotita asks, when right view is supported by how many factors does it have freedom of the heart and freedom by wisdom as its fruit and benefit? So freedom of the heart and freedom by wisdom, this is Ceto Vimutti and Panya Vimutti. Again, we're coming back to the idea of freedom here, and this is the end of the path. This is when you become an arahant again, and right view is supported by 5 things. When right view is supported by 5 factors, it has freedom of the heart and freedom by wisdom as its fruit and benefit. It's when right view is supported by ethics, by sila, by learning, sutta. Sutta is learning, not sutta as in suttas, but it's sutta, which is hearing or learning. Discussion, sakkacha, discussion with people, serenity, samatha, and discernment, vipassana. When it has these 5 factors, then when the right view is supported by these 5 factors, it has the freedom of the heart and freedom by wisdom as its fruit and benefit. So that is a very interesting list right there. So when you have that right view, whether it is the preliminary right view that you start off with when you hear the Dhamma, or it is the full right view of the stream enterer, then this is what you use for support. Ethics, we have seen that throughout the sila. The learning, sutta means, really literally means hearing, so it means the hearing of the Dhamma. So of course that is very important, because that is where right view arises. So ethics is not enough, you want to have the right view, which comes through the suttas, comes through the learning of what is going on. And then very interestingly, you have discussion, sakkacha. Yeah, because that discussion, that conversation, Q&A, all of these kind of things allows you to inquire into these teachings. Very often you learn, you're too much of a passive recipient, but maybe you don't understand. Maybe you can't really figure out what is going on. It's very important to have that ability to be able to discuss with people, to be able to ask questions, to be able to doubt, to be able to investigate. To say, I don't understand this. Do I have to take it on board if I don't understand it? No, you don't have to take it on board. Instead, investigate it more and see where you land. The idea here is not just to accept a large number of things because you are told it is so. The idea is to make it yours. Only then does it become powerful. And this is one of the differences in kind of the idea in Buddhism. Sometimes we talk about whether a religion is a religion that, it's about converting other people or not. And in one sense, we teach the Dhamma so that other people have a chance to practice these teachings. But it's not about conversion as such. In certain religions, you want to convert people because otherwise they are lost. But in Buddhism, it's not like that. In Buddhism, you want to, yes, it's nice if people practice the Dhamma, but it's about the practice that is important. The faith in its own right, without the practice, is not very valuable. And so it's more important that people are really convinced so that they put these teachings, they put them to use and they actually practice these things in the right way. So you want to convince them in a more deep sense. And that is why it is important to investigate. It's important to ask questions. It's important to not just accept things on faith, because that is not going to get you all that far. So these are interesting ideas. Discussion is part of this. And then you have serenity and discernment, samatha and vipassana at the end there. And that, of course, is the meditation practice. And what we are trying to do here, the anapanasati, the investigation of phenomena, and all of these kind of things. So that is all for this morning. So once again, please keep on enjoying yourself, have a good time, and have a nice lunch. And we'll see you back again at 3 o'clock this afternoon.